We are students of the art of play,
And we do this show called The Art of Play.
a show for the players who ask why.
I'm Vi.
And I'm Gaia.
Gaia, what are we talking about today?
So today we're back with one of my close friends, our star of the show for episode on game difficulty, the Dark Souls of all games players.
Yeah.
Welcome back, Taya.
Taya, can I call you the Clippy of Dark Souls players?
Please never call me that.
Oh my god. And we're bringing her back because we're going into an episode that she has expressed a lot of interest in with me before, that she would like to talk about on the show. And I love having more people come on the show kind of as like guest stars.
I love having more people to listen to.
Yeah, no, exactly. I genuinely love having more people here. So today we're bringing her in to talk about openness in game design.
Different from openness in like your friendly personality.
Of course, different.
Oh, you're
Aw.
so sweet.
Hey,
So-
guys, can you give us a little intro?
I actually was going to do an intro. I was going to do a question.
Oh.
I was gonna start the quiz show.
Okay.
Great. I got the buzzer ready this time. Let's go.
Do you have
Welcome
your
to the
cheat
quiz
sheet
show.
notes?
To really open this episode up, and knowing that, Taya, this was one of the episodes you were interested in working on with me, that I have a notes document that begins, oh my gosh, how long is it? 20 lines of just notes, for like jot notes for me to keep in mind, and a line could be like 30, 40, 50 words. Taya, what does openness in game design mean?
I personally interpret openness in game design as predicting the unpredictable player. That is the heading that I had in my notes, and I think that's really fun because it accounts for there being multifacets here, but also just flexibility again for the player, right? It's not just an open world, but it's like, what pieces are we giving the player flexibility in?
Yeah. Where are we allowing creativity and where are we disallowing creativity because
Exactly.
it's not actually useful, right? It doesn't further the game. It's just a character being a little, or not a character, a player being just a little too, I don't know, unhelpful on purpose, chaotic.
So when I put down a header for my notes for this episode, I put down something very similar to what Taya wrote. I said, big idea. How do we design for not knowing what your player is doing without paralyzing them in the process?
Nice. I like it.
So how do we allow our player full creative control, but at the same time actually create something creative for them?
Yeah. Where do you put the fence up?
Yes.
Yeah.
So today's episode is going to be following a little bit of a different structure than our previous episodes. Most of our episodes are a series of notes where I'm like, here's an idea, let's talk about it. Here's a game, let's talk about it. Here's a concept, let's talk about it. Or here's a question, let's ask it. And then realize it's a quiz show and have to apologize at some point. Today, we're going to be talking...
Or just start assigning points.
Yep.
10 points.
Yeah. Like, at least decide, if it's going to be a quiz show, at least give us a winner.
At least
True.
give me a t-shirt with a Pidgey on it.
Yeah.
Oh, the melted Pidgey. Okay.
At least make me my Druid Enjoyer shirt when I do a good job.
Look, I should. Okay, so for today's episode, our goal is going to be talking about different problems that people can face in open game design. This could be open world design, open decision design, or open expectation design, any open blank design, and understand how to handle this issue correctly and how to utterly fall on your face when designing around this issue. So we're going to be doing a big 5 of these. To give a quick summary at the beginning, we're going to be talking about choice paralysis or analysis paralysis, the more fun way of saying
Analysis paralysis.
I love it.
Ooh.
Say
we're
that
gonna-
5 times fast.
Analysis paralysis, analysis paralysis, analysis paralysis, analysis paralysis, analysis paralysis.
Ding, ding, ding.
I
10
said it.
points.
I fucked up the
You
last
fucked
one.
up the last one. I get the points. Frigged up.
Next, we're going to be talking about level scaling and handling
Gaia, what is going on over there?
I can't believe I hit my mic. We're going to talk about level scaling and how you can handle the idea of a player who's too low level going to a high level area, or players a high level going back to a low level area.
The Pokemon
The
scenario.
Pokemon scenario.
Yeah, also Oblivion and Skyrim, because those are going to be the big examples for those two. We're going to be talking about the content void, and I actually don't remember what that topic is because I called it that for fun, forgetting entirely what's
I
inside
expect
of it.
that is like a little bit of an open world problem where you just have like sort of hubs of things and then desert.
Yes.
I had that one also being like, how do you fill space and time? So
Yeah.
wasting the player's time, pacing
Yeah.
in a game, adding little
it's
fun
the,
tidbits to interact
like a
with.
fast travel thing, or like they want to go explore like the wasteland bit. There still has to be stuff to discover in there.
Exactly.
Otherwise,
Having things to
like,
discover instead of playing Red Dead Redemption 2 and you're on a horse for 20 minutes and you're like, oh, look, it's the 60th tree I've passed that looks the same. Neat.
Yeah. Item number 4 is going to be goal posting. Just goal posting, landmarking, whatever term you want for that one.
Not getting lost.
Yep. And then we're going to be doing our final item of, quote, basic open world design. So we're going to be coming into the remaining items with an open world design that we haven't touched on prior.
Yeah.
So, without any further ado, let's talk about analysis paralysis. And of course, this means because she also has the notes, Taya, what's analysis paralysis?
Have you ever sat down after a long day and you're at home and you're like, man, I'm really hungry. I have to pick something to eat for dinner. But I don't know what I want for dinner. Or I'm scrolling on Skip the Dishes and there's 500,000 options and I know I'm hungry, but I'm overwhelmed.
Yes, but the answer is always going to be the Eggo waffles in my freezer.
Well, hey.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you have a default, but also overwhelmed. An alternative version of this is, have you ever gone into like a new restaurant you've never been in before, and you look at the menu and there's like 1,000 items, and you just can't pick?
Yeah.
And you start getting like frustrated or anxious or upset.
This is the decision fatigue of like I'm really hungry, but please God, I don't want to make another decision.
Exactly.
Somebody just feed me.
Yeah, and a lot of people have this issue actually in choosing games as well. Analysis paralysis is like
My
a
Steam
real
account
thing.
of 550 games.
Exactly. You're
Yeah.
like, I have so many options that I now do not have the ability to choose an option.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, that happens this is why I play games for a really long time, right? It's because I want to choose one game that is good, that people have recommended to me, and I'm going to play the whole thing, start to finish, and then I just won't play video games for a little bit. And then when the next big one comes along, I have the capacity to be like,
I am
big
so
game
well
time.
aware because we have a video game themed show, and it's just Breath of the Wild and Baldur's Gate 3.
Look,
I come in here with a list of like 10 games.
No.
Like, if I don't have 10, it's not good. Vi has 1.
I have one. I'm consistent.
You're so consistent.
Yeah.
It's actually kind of nice to know I can rely on that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, what is Vi going to talk about? Baldur's Gate 3, Breath of the Wild.
You
If
have
it's-
your
if it's-
Eggo waffles.
Look, if it starts with a B, oh my God, if it starts with a B, it's my key to decision fatigue because the Eggo waffles are blueberry.
See, okay, it all makes sense.
It all makes sense. What a frightening comparison.
Maybe we've solved analysis paralysis. You just
Maybe
need to
we've
pick a
solved
letter,
analysis
start with a
paralysis.
pick
B.
a letter, and then just
Yeah.
make all your decisions based
That's
on that
actually
letter.
a really good
I
solution.
think that's probably terrible advice.
No,
That is really bad
no,
advice.
hear me out. No, this is actually good. Okay, you've decided that you are going to order dinner. Okay, make all of your decisions around one letter. Pick like an S or something.
I guess
right?
if you pick a good letter,
If you
that's
pick a good letter,
an
it's
important
great.
piece.
Yeah. Just pick a common letter. Yeah, just.
I don't think B is particularly common.
I'm not suggesting that people do.
I was gonna say, what's a B dinner you're gonna get? Like,
Okay, Isaac's Way in town has a chicken dish with like a blueberry sauce, and I don't recommend it, but you can get it.
I mean, you can get it, but what is the? Is it a Korean dish?
Yes.
oh yeah, the bibimbap.
Yes,
yeah.
thank you.
I probably pronounced that wrong too.
Yeah.
But we got the idea.
Yeah, we got
Yeah.
our first Jeopardy category in
Yes.
B words for
B-words.
supper.
B-words.
Let's
Yeah.
go.
So the thing with analysis paralysis in open game design is that when you are designing for an open game, that means you have an infinite number of things you can do. You just think about opening the Skyrim. Once you get out of Helgen, you can travel anywhere, do anything, get any items, learn any skills, go to any location.
Yep.
And it's a pretty common problem when people run into this. That they just say, "Okay, I'm going to do one thing." Actually, this is going to sound wild, but this is an issue I actually have with Stardew Valley in its game design. Now, I think
sure.
Stardew Valley is one of the best games I've ever played. What do I do in Stardew Valley when I open a new save every time, even though I know the game? I fish for the entire first half of spring. Just constantly fish.
Yeah, it's your Eggo waffle.
Yeah. Like, it's so easy to get people overwhelmed with analysis paralysis, with ideas, and then they'll do one thing. And the problem with that is they get bored of that one thing, and then they close the game after 6 hours of
Yeah.
fishing and say, all I did was fishing.
It's
I don't really want
the
to reopen
rage
it.
quit equivalent again, right? It's your brain trying to break down
It's
the
a
too
boredom
many
quit.
options, and usually
Yeah.
players will just quit, or they'll just fixate on something.
This is actually a spectrum. It's too easy, and I got bored, so I quit. It's too hard, and so I got bored,
Exactly.
and so I got bored or angry of losing, so I quit.
Yeah, there's too
Yeah.
much, so I quit. It's too hard, so I quit.
Yeah.
Which both those can be problems. And this kind of leads to the question of, okay, players are at risk of being overwhelmed. And this is a huge problem in games like Skyrim, for example. This can even be a problem in Animal Crossing, though I think they've mostly got it solved nowadays,
Yeah.
right? But giving players too many options can be a problem. So how do we get around that?
What a good question.
I feel like the easy answer is, well, we have too many options. Let's just give them
them less options?
and maybe don't give them less options overall, but break the options down into smaller chunks.
See, I was gonna go with some guidance. like I'm thinking like when you leave the starter area of a world, like when you leave like kind of the first in The Witcher, or like the Breath of the Wild, you leave the Great Plateau, right? It's like, okay, I'm gonna go this way first, right? And then the path actually diverges a little bit outside of that, right? Just a little bit of guidance, and then some clear next steps.
I would add the Great Plateau itself is actually an example in my notes of how to overcome analysis paralysis. Because Legend of Zelda does this really well in all of their games, but the Great Plateau is great for this in that they give you items one by one and then force you to use that one item until you're comfortable with it.
Yeah.
And then they'll consider giving you another one, right? This is like how you get the bomb ability before you get the ice ability in Breath of the Wild, for example.
It's breaking it down into pieces again.
Yeah. It's we talked a lot in our tutorial episode about like what you can do to make sure it's comfortable with all of the tools that you've given them before you release them into the world, right?
Tell me, remember the tutorial episode? That was episode 3.
Hey, I have a memory for long term and no short term.
So tell me next year I can ask you about today's episode.
Correct.
Got it. But yeah, one of the big things is to break it down into chunks. I think of Civilization in this. If you launch up a new Civ game, what can you build? Scout, Warrior, Builder, Monument.
Yeah.
That's it. And by the end of the game, what can you build?
All of
lot.
the things.
I do get a little bit of analysis paralysis at the end of Civ, despite having 900 hours in just one of the Civ games. Because it is a lot. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, but imagine being faced with that menu when you launch Civ.
Yeah.
And you just have infinite options.
You would
like,
be
I
like-
would quit the game
You would be
immediately.
like, no.
And if you don't know what the options are and what they mean,
Yeah. I just imagine it like, okay, if you were going to go shopping for a pair of shoes, right? Okay. And you walked into a store that had every pair of shoes ever, you're never going to find the ones that you want.
I'm
right?
leaving the store.
Yeah. I'm outta
Goodbye.
here.
Give
Yeah.
me something that doesn't give me as many options.
Here's a nice selection of a few good things that are like curated, or we selected the best ones. And when you find a shoe you like, it comes in some colors.
Yeah, or break it down by piece again. Have like, these are where the running shoes are in this section of the store. This is where the flats
Categorization.
are. This is
Yeah.
where the heels are. And they can give you guidance too, right? We can have the little arrows that say, if you're looking for comfy shoes, follow the nice green arrows.
Or you can have a person. Hey, what the heck am I supposed to do
Hey,
in this
listen.
store?
No, I was doing the joke from
I'm
Legend of
aware.
Zelda. You just both went silent and I got very concerned.
We were just judging you
We-
for making a bad joke.
Yeah,
Okay,
but I was
cool.
also like, yes, I'm listening.
I
I'm
understand.
paying attention.
I will also throw in there's just doing like the categorization in
Yeah.
that you can also make a player make a series of small decisions in a row, right? Who says you have to pick all your skills? What if at the start of a game, like, I don't know, Fallout New Vegas, that we give you a little questionnaire and your answers determine how your starting stats and character will be, and then you can edit them later, but it gives you a pre-made character.
Yeah.
Breaking it down into pieces. I also think that Baldur's Gate does this really well with the character creation screen, because I was really nervous
yeah.
going into this game to create my character, because I'm the type of person that totally gets overwhelmed when I have to create a character. I'm like, okay, give me 3 hours and I have to pick every color
You
I
literally
want.
asked to play it a few hours before we were going to start playing it so that you could make a character.
Because I was nervous. And then the screen was actually really relatively user-friendly, especially like when you're choosing your classes, because it gives you your major class and then subclasses after.
Yeah.
So it breaks it down into pieces, so you're only faced with like 4 or 5 decisions at a time.
This is also the equivalent of your DM being like, hey, I think that you should play, okay, so there's this many character classes and then plus homebrew stuff, right? Pick one of these 3. Like, or just pick a martial class, but I think you would like one of these 3.
Exactly.
Right? And then I'll help you. You just tell me, do you want to be really strong? What do you think this person is like? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
have a buddy.
And this will go in later to our discussion when we talk about like goal posting as well, in that if your player is at risk of seeing a major landscape and not knowing where to go and getting overwhelmed, you do the not Windhelm, or I guess it is Windhelm in Skyrim strategy, where when you crest after Riverview, the first major town, you finished all the quests, you have the idea of the game works, you come out from a mountain pass, like very high up on the mountain, you see a whole world in front of you, and right in the middle is this grandiose city with massive walls. Like, where are you going to go?
Yeah.
The massive, grandiose city with walls. Of course you're going to go straight there. That's
Yeah.
so cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the all roads lead to...
Windhelm?
Never played Skyrim. Windhelm?
I don't even know if it's Windhelm. I can't remember exactly. Whiterun. It's Whiterun.
Whiterun.
Oh my
of
goodness,
course it's
now I
Whiterun.
know what you're talking
Yeah.
Yes,
about.
Whiterun.
Okay.
I'm
Yeah.
so sorry.
Yeah.
There's too many cities in that game with
Yeah.
similar W names.
Hey,
Yeah.
problems of openness. Don't pick one letter as your Eggo
Yeah.
waffle and then make all decisions based on it.
If you're a game developer, the one letter thing is not for you.
Windhelm, Winterhold, Whiterun.
No. If you're a game developer and you listen to this show, that advice was for us. That was for the
us.
players.
That's
that
for
was
the player
when you design
experience,
bad.
Yeah.
not the dev experience.
Yes, you need to
please.
name things differently so that we can find them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the next major topic then is level scaling. So I'm going to actually ask you, Vi, when I say level scaling, what do you imagine? I don't even know how much you know about level scaling. This is a way of introducing the topic.
Probably like nothing. I'm level scaling. Just like making areas specific to different levels. That's what that feels
Yeah, or
like.
things
You know what's
getting more
wild?
difficult.
It's
Yeah.
actually the exact opposite. Level scaling is when you change the difficulty of the enemies to match the level of the player wherever they
Oh.
go.
Oh,
So let's
okay.
say you beat area 1, you go
Yeah.
from level 1 to 10, it's full of a bunch of rats that you kill.
Sure.
You reach level 10, go back to the beginning,
Yeah.
and now the rats are level 10, and they take the same
Oh.
number of hits to kill.
Right. Fair enough.
How would you feel in that scenario?
Be like, man, I just wanted my easy rats.
I think you're the only person that wants easy rats in that scenario. We're all like, oh my gosh, make the rats harder. This is boring.
I
No,
believe
I just-
believe in the easy rats as
No,
well.
no.
'cause
If I
it's-
come back to the starting area, I want to feel like I progressed, right? I want
That's
to. I
fair.
want to hit the little thing and for it to absolutely become a puddle.
Okay, I think the amount of rats in this scenario is important. If you can take down a few rats and you have a puddle, that's great. If you're constantly being thrown rats at you for an hour and they're puddles,
No one
that's
wants
tedious.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But this is one of those things that's actually very difficult in game design because level scaling was really introduced by the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion in that wherever you go, it's the same difficulty. So here was
Yeah.
the problem. Imagine playing a game like Breath of the Wild where you can go straight to the castle and fight the final boss Ganon. And imagine if he's level 1 with you. Assuming that let's
Yeah.
assume the game had a level system just for the sake of argument. It's
Yeah.
level 1. You go defeat one guardian, come back, he's now the same difficulty as that guardian. You defeat 2 and he's twice as hard as guardians. Imagine playing a game like Skyrim and you go fight the final dragon boss immediately and it's level 5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it actually gets worse because Oblivion did that with items and weapons and armor and abilities too. So as you progress through the game, you're going to be fighting thugs who are like guarding a bridge with legendary magical weapons.
Yeah.
Items that are supposed to be so rare no one has them, like
and
the
then
Daedric
suddenly
armor.
everybody has them.
And like a
Yeah.
bandit has it.
Yeah, that
and
sucked.
it was one of these things where then why would you ever do a quest if the
Oh.
quest reward scales as you level up?
Do you know what this is?
Exactly.
This is DMs being like, okay, now every lock is a DC like 30, even though like if we were playing a level 1 character, that DC would not be as high.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's scaling. It's like in D&D
Yeah,
saying
you
now
should-
every door is reinforced.
Yeah, you be able to get better regardless of like what else is happening.
My players
Yeah.
are really good at stealth, so now I'm giving everyone like dark vision and like the ability to detect stealth.
Yeah, no, just let people be good at stuff.
My player
Yeah.
has a high armor, so now every single enemy has a really high like damage like modifier.
Yeah,
This
or
is
at
actually-
least balance it.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. This is one of those things where it's like, you know, if we're talking about like this is Fort Knox and your D&D characters are going to break in, yeah, the DC on the locks are going to be 1 billion, right? But if this is like Joe the like blacksmith's like mom's house, that you can kick in that door.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think that the narrative piece in level scaling is actually one of the most important pieces
Oh,
of
it breaks
doing
immersion
Yeah.
so bad.
level
Yeah.
scaling well and poorly, right? You can do level scaling and set your, like if you're going through Pokemon, for example, right? Each time you go into a gym battle, you don't want the gym person that you're going to fight to be
sure.
a baby, to
Yeah.
step on them like a bird,
Yeah.
right? But you also don't want them to be 300 levels higher than you.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're walking around in the grass, that's less relevant.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
picking and choosing so that, you know, random Joe on the corner is
Yeah.
smushable.
They're smushable, but the gym battles are always challenging
Yeah.
because you expect them to be
and those are the
challenging.
key points in the narrative, right?
Yeah.
And this
Yeah,
is especially if you're making a game that's more open world where you can do the gyms in any order. You
Mm-hmm.
don't want to walk into a gym and get stomped by a level 90 team, which I know the gyms only go up to level 50, but still. And then
Yeah.
walk to the next gym and it's the level 12 gym. You want it to scale with you. Even the Pokemon anime actually had the scaling where they asked Ash in one of the episodes how many badges he had, and then they walked over to a series of pedestals with a different set of Pokeballs and chose the pedestal for the number of badges he already had.
Wow.
Which that makes full sense in how they would choose their team because the gym challenge is a progressive challenge that you can start from
Yeah.
any point. That's
Sorry,
the
is this
purpose.
introducing Pokemon lore to understand that when you walk, have Pokemon to challenge your particular level?
Yes.
Okay, that makes
Yeah,
sense.
that's
Yeah.
exactly it.
Okay.
And I wrote a note here. I want to come back to the Ganon thing quickly. What I wrote in my sheet exactly was, imagine playing Breath of the Wild, going straight to Ganon and fighting something equivalent to a Bokoblin.
No,
Poke
Like, 'cause
Ganon
that-
with the stick. Like,
I don't want to.
Bokoblin Ganon. Like,
No, the final boss is like this is the narrative thing again, right? Like, and we talked about this when we talked about difficulty, right? Like, if you don't want a player to be there, make it hard enough that they won't attempt it until they're strong enough,
Yeah,
right? Or until they have the skills to work around it.
now, there is the issue that if we're designing an open world game, the more barriers we impose based on level, the more we're closing off that open world. So we have to be careful to not close a world that we've explicitly designed to be open. This actually comes back to the Pokemon games, where generally you can't progress until you beat the gym. It's not an open world, it is level based, right? So we do want it to be open world, but we also want to make sure that there's a reasonable, hard challenge that feels like they had to work to get there. Now, I actually like what they did in Skyrim for this, because Skyrim actually really worked on this because, Oblivion fell flat on its face, in that the bosses have a minimum and a maximum level. So the boss has a minimum level of difficulty it can be, but then it starts scaling with you until it hits a ceiling and you keep going up.
You can do this in D&D too. This is how I do. If my family is listening, stop. Yeah. This is how I decide on the HP for bosses. I will use like the challenge rating guide, because it's just helpful, and then I will go take the right challenge rating monsters and I will take their HP range. Like, I will take their minimum and their maximum, and when my family has hit within that range, I just then decide when the best like last strike is, right? Like, if somebody's been like kind of falling on their face, like my mom's character sometimes does like silly stuff and it like doesn't work. She'll like spider climb something and I'm like, why are you doing that? Or somebody who's been really struggling, when they finally land a hit, I'll be like, that's the one that kills them, right? Then I just find a satisfying narrative end for that creature.
yeah, it's focused on the player's experience in the game or the session.
Yeah,
versus
It's not a hard number. It's just like, between here. So it's still within the rules, but it's like that one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so you can rescale something within limits to make it more immersive for a player, but if you rescale outside of those limits, the immersion starts rapidly dropping off, basically. So there's a way to do it right. Scale within limits that are reasonable for the player. Keep the openness where the player can do what they want and approach what they want within limits. Don't let them fight God at level 5. Don't force them to fight rats at level 100, kind of thing.
Nobody wants to fight Bobblekins.
I'm glad
any
that's the one that
point.
I'm glad that the rat example didn't land, but the Bokoblin example did land.
And no one really wants to fight the Bokoblins cosplaying as Ganon.
No,
right?
No, exactly.
No, no one, like, here's the thing. When the Blood Moon shows up, I'm never like, oh, joy, more
Yeah.
things. I'm like, ugh,
Stress.
tedium. Yeah.
My favorite thing
Yeah.
in Breath of the Wild as well is if you move through the map fast enough, it doesn't know how to load, so it force loads the Blood Moon just so that it can actually load the content in time
It's pretty good.
and figure out what it's doing.
Yeah.
So you can force a Blood Moon by flinging yourself across the map fast enough.
Yeah.
Terrifying.
I think it was speed across the map. It was a certain series of actions that forced the Blood Moon because the game it has a load error and needs to reset.
Yeah. It's one of the hacks that, like, lets you fly. Like, there's, like, a bomb thing that you can do and just, like, across the map.
Oh yeah, you have to
Yeah.
you have to double up the bomb hits.
Yeah.
But the next item in my list for things that can go good or bad when designing games for openness is called the content void. And I'm going to throw this back to Taya. Taya, I know you have a different name for this, but what's the content void?
The content void name I have is length and pacing, which I think is really valuable for players. Again, it's the example of riding through the woods for 2 hours on a
Yeah.
horse in Red Dead Redemption 2 and you're not doing anything, but I think also comboed with being overwhelmed with 10 million things at the same time. Recently I've been playing Pokemon Fusion and there are some really tedious quests in there too, like where you have to go find a whole bunch of sheep that are just
Yeah.
randomly out in the world.
I'm
So
gonna go collect bugs.
Oh my God, wait, there were
Exactly.
sheep we had to look for.
I
weren't
I
there?
can't remember if it was sheep exactly, but it was something like sheep, and you literally just have to walk around the map again and fight a whole bunch of low-level Pokemon while you're engaging with the game and just poke sheep, and it takes you like an hour, and it's wasting the player's time, in my opinion.
I should add, Pokemon Infinite Fusion's an amazing
It
game,
is
and the
great.
quest system
I
is
love
really
it.
nice.
And I
but
think
it
it's a
has-
meme. I think it's done in to mess with you, like as a joke.
But Infinite Fusion is also a very open world version of Pokemon.
Any game that has you collect a set number of things for no particular reason is a quest that I am likely to skip. Because it's
yeah.
just like, I don't want to do that. I'm interested in exploring things, and you're telling me to go around the village and collect fireflies. Like,
Exactly. Or give the things value, at least. One of the best things
Yeah.
about Skyrim is that they wrote original content for all of the books that you can pick up and read in
Yeah.
the game, so you can just
Oh, yeah.
engage with
now,
that.
you've seen the Brian David Gilbert Polygon. Okay, excellent. Cool. Solid. Just wanted to put that out there.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, that was all I had to say.
I would also add that this is a really common problem in terms of procedurally generated games where they
Yeah.
generate a lot of content. Now, everyone probably knows No Man's Sky, the example from 2013 that released with nearly no content. But I think a more pertinent example today is Starfield from Bethesda that came out last year, which was, again, promised to be a near infinite galaxy with near infinite planets that you could visit while you're going towards the center. And all of the planets are so identical that when you land on a planet, if you see a specific building, you leave again because it's the exact same quest you've done 30 times. Like, it's at the point where you can recognize the layout of the planet
Yeah.
and know what quests are there and leave again.
Yeah.
And this is a really big problem because without dedicated content, a game can feel shallow. It can feel hollow. It can feel like it's missing something or that what it has isn't worth doing, right? I can imagine playing a game with thousands of fetch quests like the old GTA versus, I don't know, Undertale?
Yeah.
Which, like, Undertale's a little bit less open world, but still, like, it has that same energy of would you rather at that point, right?
Yeah, like I'm thinking about games that balance this really well. So like open world-ish games.
I know Taya and I have one really good one in a bit.
Oh, excellent. I was just going to say, like, I think The Witcher 3 is very balanced in this way, where it's like, yeah, there is space where it's like, you know, nothing is really here, but there are dangerous things. And when you're in the wilderness, you collect stuff that you are going to need later that isn't sort of readily available. Like, I'm talking about, like, herbs and stuff, right? Where, like, yeah, I can buy them later, but maybe I want my money for stuff that I can only get in the cities, right? And then obviously Baldur's Gate 3 is going to be in here because I have yet to find a part
I was
of
about to say,
Yeah.
I've never done a single thing in Baldur's Gate that didn't feel like it was absolutely necessary. or
Yeah,
important.
exactly. That map is exactly the right size. I found
so good.
occasionally with like Breath of the Wild, because I played that game so much and I played across the map, that there were lots of spaces where I was like, well, this is more winter, and like moved on, right?
Yeah, it feels more like empty space than.
Oh, yeah, I did a whole
intentionally filled.
lap around the very, very edge of the map for I don't know why. I just
Dedicated
wanted to see.
gamer.
I just wanted to see
I know
what
people
was
who do that
there.
with the new Legend of
Yeah.
Zelda game, Tears of the Kingdom.
I'm working on Tears of the Kingdom.
I saw someone
It'll be the
who-
next game that I talk about, and only that one. Yeah.
I saw a YouTuber who tried a challenge of, is it possible in, I was Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, one of them, to walk in a straight line from one end of the map to the other without leaving that line at all.
Okay.
At any point. And it's just like, I don't know why, like, I just remembered that in the idea of the content void, but even then he ran into like 30 quests
Yeah.
in that straight line.
Yeah.
But there's one game that I think really gives a shining example of how do you fit content into your open world without overwhelming the player, but also without leaving them wanting. And Taya, I think you might have something on this too. This is the Yakuza series.
I haven't played Yakuza, so I can't really comment on that.
Okay, I'm going to jump in next. I have played through so many of the Yakuza games. And
This is the Mafia ones?
the Japanese Mafia ones.
Yeah, yeah,
So
okay.
the map in Yakuza is actually very small.
Mm-hmm.
Right, it is particularly like in a single city, and in Yakuza 0, it's 2 suburbs in roughly the same city.
Oh my
Right,
gosh. Yeah.
and here's the thing: a big problem with a lot of open world games, especially open world games with cities, is the
Mm-hmm.
idea that they have these big skylines that are all impossible to see through because they're full of skyscrapers. This was the issue with Cyberpunk. You can't climb to the top of buildings. This is an Assassin's Creed, so you look forward and you see building. You go past it, building. You go past building,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's this constant barrage of buildings. And then there's Yakuza, where you are surrounded by buildings, just like Cyberpunk, deep in a city, and all of them are full of these neon signs and lights and unique designs, and there's mom and pop shops everywhere. There's people like dancing in the streets that you can interact with and get quests from. There's a point where there's an area where they're shooting a film and you find the in-game clone of Michael Jackson asking you to help direct his film. And that just happens,
Yeah.
right? Like, the game stuffs this relatively small open world with so many things
Mm-hmm.
to do, but it's still an open world. It's still an open city you can go around in and do what
Yeah.
you want and progress at
There's
your own
not a lot
pace.
of like empty little spaces.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, but there's so much stuff to do everywhere. And again, cities have a big issue with open worlds because there's no vantage point to look up around the city. You just can't do it. But the Yakuza games have really made this dense, bright, shining city that feels like a real city with things to do.
I think there's an important marriage here between like the theme of your setting and the content you fill it with. If you're doing Red Dead Redemption where the theme is desert, maybe you should figure out what else is happening in the desert, right? Or just make it too hard to go there, or just don't let players veer from the trail, right? Like, you know,
or just don't pick a desert if you don't have content to fill a desert with.
If you didn't like write on the whiteboard in the room with all your developers, desert, and people went, yes, why are you doing it?
And I feel like the whole concept of this filling space doesn't really align super well with desert, which is a big open empty void. It could if you're creative about it.
On the other hand, if you walk into the room and you write cowboys, now we've got a different question, because now we're talking about like society and people, right? Way easier to spill face. Wow, that wasn't a word. To fill space, thank you. Than it is to just go, okay, the setting is desert.
Yeah, and I think also there's an important difference in how you think about this, in that, remember in our previous episode on difficulty, we talked about your goal is not to make a difficult game, is to make a fun game that is difficult. Your goal is not to fill the game with content, it's to make a game that is filled with content.
Yes, that has purposeful content.
Right? It's a different idea of, I've definitely played games that feel like they filled it with content after.
Hey.
Fetch quests.
You know what? I've read a lot of books. I have read books where every page is, you know, significant, and then some fluff where it's like, okay, we just need to have like a little downtime moment, so let's do some stuff that isn't like huge for character arcs. I have also read books that take 900 pages to say nothing.
That's every Ayn Rand book. Also, don't read Ayn Rand. There are many problems with reading Ayn Rand, but every one of her books is like that.
I don't want to put anybody on blast here, but Sarah J. Maas, why? There's so many books, and
Reverend
they're
Taya
all...
is a big reader as well. She's just suffering over there.
I cannot comment on Sarah J. Maas.
Do you not? Are you on my camp, or are you in a different other camp?
I cannot comment.
Ooh. Sounds like something we'll have to talk about later.
Something off air.
Yeah.
But I agree with that as a concept. Like, I think you can have a balance between having space and then having important moments appear. Like, even if you're filling up a city, for example, you can have a couple, like, more plain, empty-looking skyscrapers. As long as every few skyscrapers, there's something important that you can interact with, and you can tell the difference.
Yes.
Yes, being able to see the difference is big.
Yeah,
but
like if you were going to do like a post-apocalyptic city, right? That is a city that is by definition more empty. You just have to do you just have to do more environmental storytelling. You have to why that piece of rubble.
And especially if you are going to fill the space with infinite content, like I think Fallout 4 does a really good job of giving you so much content to interact with. But again, it makes big flashy signs, and it's very clear when you're going into a region, like this is the important thing I need to interact with.
Yeah,
and
it tells you what you can ignore.
And New Vegas did it by, instead of making the landscape look less post-apocalyptic, they put things underneath or inside of the landscape to interact with instead, which makes full sense. It looks boring, but everything exists underneath the hood because people are trying to survive.
Great. Yeah.
Right? I would also add, though, we talked about respecting like time as much as respecting space, and this is also true because, come on, I've played some Final Fantasy games. I've seen so much playthrough of Final Fantasy games. The original Final Fantasy games, especially Final Fantasy 3, require you to just grind against enemies for like 20 plus hours.
Well, we talked about like the beginning of games being arcade games where that's just how they were made, and I think it takes a while to come out of that headspace as a community to just be like, okay, grinding actually isn't fun.
Yeah.
Right? Let's do something that's better.
And you can imagine it would be better to respect your player's time and to say, okay, let's actually put something fun in here. You can still make the player grind if you give them a reason to have fun doing it.
Yeah.
Give them flexibility in their grinding, give them the choice to not grind if they don't want to grind, or make the grinding valuable to the storytelling.
Yeah, even Baldur's Gate kind of has that feeling where you can't just progress without leveling up because you're going to instantly die.
Yeah.
So the game needs you to grind to gain levels. Now, it's not as much grinding.
It's not really grinding. It's just
not
like
as
it's
much
just like
grinding.
when you encounter enemies, right? You're probably going to fight them because I'm not playing the game for experience, right? But I hope that when I get to the next big narrative chunk, that I have naturally progressed enough to be at the right level for that.
Yeah, exactly.
Thing.
So the game throws in tons of quests and activities that do involve fighting, but those fights feel rewarding in the story.
Yeah.
So even though they are like, okay, you need to do a fight to level up, you don't feel like
You
they're
don't-
saying
you don't
need to do
feel-
a fight to level
yeah,
up.
I never feel like wow, I can't speak today. Larian? How do you say the name of this? Larian, thank you. I never feel like Larian's like, hey, you know how you've been like fucking around for a little bit? I think maybe you should not do that. Here's a bugbear.
Yeah, and you're
Here's
also
a bugbear.
you're not also given like 4
Rocks fall.
goblins like
Yeah.
every 20 feet. That's like, okay, I have to just hit another goblin and move
Yeah.
on, hit another goblin and move
Move
on.
on,
It's like,
yeah.
here's a camp. Here's an
Yes.
interesting piece of the story.
Yeah.
Right?
But it's also like when you encounter things that are like sort of camps of monsters, it's usually like, oh, but they're protecting something. Oh, they have something that one of my companions needs.
You can stealth it if you want.
Yeah, you can, and they're built for
You can
that.
just
Like
walk on in there and actually be fine if you know what you're doing.
there's great
Speed check.
architectural pieces where like there is always kind of an upper level where you could just max for stealth and just do that.
it gives the
Yeah.
player flexibility. Again, you could just straight up not do the encounter if you don't
Yeah, if you
want
didn't want to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you don't
You could
even need
just-
to fight to gain the levels.
Yeah.
Doing the quests and the goal
Yeah,
still gives
I will,
XP.
I will often just split my party and then take the stealth characters in and be like, hey, you're gonna do the thing and then we're all gonna leave.
Never split the party. It's the OG rule.
No, it works and it's great. I just
It's
say
so good
yeah.
in Baldur's Gate.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, the one thing I do want to say here is that like when you're designing a game, the most important thing people have is their time. And if you're designing a game where you don't want to play part of it, right? Or you're like, okay, that bit's boring, it should go, right? If there's
Totally.
not a way around it, it doesn't need to be there.
Make the details feel valuable, or
Yep.
just don't add the details and let them move on through the area,
Yeah.
or just not have to grind through it.
Yeah, like I was thinking about when we had Scott Bateman in, he's talking about it like, oh, you know, has kids, doesn't have whole lot of time to game, but like when they pick up a game, they want it to feel really good, right? So design your game for that person who only has like maybe an hour every couple of days, right? They should still feel like within that hour they progress enough, right? They do a good little chunk, but none of their time was like wasted.
Yeah.
Put that on the whiteboard, right?
Yeah.
Use your time wisely
Yeah,
instead
So-
of a desert.
I do really like this whiteboard.
Yeah.
the whiteboard
I
analogy is
do.
really
It's
good.
can
really
see
good.
it.
Yeah.
So this brings us into our next topic now on designing for open worlds, and this is goal posting. This is otherwise known as landmarking or the Disney World strategy, which makes this a very interesting topic. So I'm going to ask kind of forward, as I always do.
Yeah.
What is goal posting or landmarking?
As the resident
Look at the
Dark
person with the
Souls
cheat sheet.
girly,
I'm like, tell me about how Dark Souls does
Yeah.
this. Yeah,
pretty much. I was so
Sorry, hang on. Resident Dark Souls girly is another great
That's
shirt.
good. That's good.
Danke.
That
Yeah.
one's awesome.
Yeah, but it is one of the best examples in my opinion of really good landmarking. I'm actually going to
Yeah.
use Elden Ring as an example because I think it's a little bit better to
Little bit it's-
visualize.
yeah, open
but like
world.
when you enter the world of Elden Ring, usually the one of the two things you see when you enter the area is the giant golden air tree that you know you're going to have to go towards at some point,
right.
or the tree sentinel who is going to smack you and make it hurt.
Mm.
And then but you can also, when you look through, it's kind of like an empty-ish space of land, a few trees, and you see like a church off to the left. You
Yeah.
see the big tree in the distance, you see some hills, and everything that you see in a Dark Souls game or in Elden Ring as an example, you can get to.
Yes.
So it gives the player like a direct line of sight so they know which hubs they're going to and which
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
areas like to direct their attention to.
It's just a good way of like it is just landmarking, but physically, it is saying like, okay, if you can see it, right, that's going to be someplace that is valuable
Well, and
to go
that's
to.
why they call it landmarking. They're
Yeah, it's a
literally
great-
landmarks.
it's a great name.
Right? It's like
Yeah.
sticking the Eiffel Tower in the middle of your game, and you're
Yeah.
going, okay, well, the player's gonna see that because
Yes,
it looks
it's
big and important.
putting a flashing light on it. That one, go there.
yeah, glowing Pac-Man at the top of the Eiffel Tower. Like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna walk towards that because it
That's
looks
gonna be great,
interesting,
yeah.
right? And it helps, I think, direct the player's attention as well. So you're not just wandering around in the woods
Oh,
for
for sure.
2
Yeah.
hours at Skyrim.
Yeah.
Sometimes,
At Skyrim, yeah. Yeah, it's the like I thought this was going to be interesting to explore, but instead it's just boring.
yeah. And
Yeah.
I mean, look, that's a risk of walking into the woods, right? Sometimes
is
it's really entertaining. Sometimes
Trees.
trees.
sometimes it's on you as
I'm
the
gonna
player.
hang on. Sorry, I have to not say that. My degree is trees.
The tree is trees, and that makes the normal trees boring and the
Yeah.
interesting trees very interesting.
That's fair.
But there's a reason why we call it the Disney World lesson, in that most game designers understanding today, like actual formalized understanding of landmarking and goal posting, is from Disney World, and this
Yeah.
isn't an actual joke. So imagine Disney World for a second as, and I'm going to actually steal this from an article by Chirag Raman, apparently is the name of the website. So I'm just going to steal it from this website because it makes it so much easier. It was written in 2012, which means it's old, and this is institutionalized knowledge.
Sure.
Imagine Disney World as an open world game. You have thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people every day entering into your world and trying to figure out what to do. Now, there's lots of things in the world that would be interesting if you know a lot about it, the shops and the small rides and the small like little niche things, but if there are major attractions that the majority of people are supposed to go to, because that helps get them interested, that gets them excited, that gets them involved in the world, that gets them to want to go buy the merch. So what do? Well, you build these massive structures that you can see from anywhere in the park, in your region, or structures that pull you towards it. I always think of like the Magic Castle in Magic Kingdom, that massive light up castle, especially at night, that is like shining different colors. You want to go towards that. It's cool. It's a hub. It's everything you want to see at Disney World.
Ooh.
Or the big sphere in Epcot.
You know what? Disney World is a really good analogy for just open world game. Because if
most modern open world game design literally comes from studying Disney World. It's great. It's a really good tool to think about it. Like if you're designing an open world, think about Disneyland, because there are people who just do the big things, right? And that's great. And they still had a day at Disneyland they enjoyed. You can also do the people who are really obsessed with Disneyland and be like, did you know there's a hidden Mickey here? Like, just do your little things, put in your Easter eggs, right? Make it valuable for the person who's going to spend time investigating every corner of the map like me, or do it for people who just want to do big beats and move on.
And that's a really valuable analogy, I think, also for respecting the player's time. Going to that topic is a concept as well, right? If you design your game in the sense of like, here are all the major attractions that I want to hit, and I can hit all those, and I feel like I've had a valuable experience, that's fantastic. If you design to give the details that they can interact with, but they're not necessary.
And they're not like overwhelming, and that like, oh my goodness, there's so much stuff I'm not exploring.
Yeah, you don't have to grind and go to every single ice cream shop in Disneyland in order to access one of the big
You don't have every fetch quest to be able to defeat the final boss.
If you wanted to, but they're not essential.
If you really wanted to collect the fireflies for that guy, you can. If you don't give a care, you don't have to.
But you don't have to.
Yeah.
Ganon's not going to care about the fireflies.
This also really helps, though, with people getting overwhelmed. If you have an infinite number of choices, but there's one big thing in the distance calling your attention,
there's a big thing.
One choice that stands out. If this is the blueberry waffle. This is the one thing that is obviously the one you should pick, and picking other things requires you to say, actually, I prefer this small thing, rather than saying, which one do I want?
I can't believe that I'm getting put on blast for blueberry waffles.
No, this is great. It's great. This is actually useful.
Peak game design.
This also comes back to what I said previous of cresting the hill in Skyrim and seeing Whiterun in the distance, this massive city that's just like, it's cool. I think back to New Vegas, which I've only played a little bit of New Vegas, but from every point in New Vegas, unless you're explicitly behind a wall, you can see the Tower of New Vegas in the distance, which contains Mr. House, one of the main characters of the game. And every quest in New Vegas leads you to a location. Actually, multiple quests tend to lead to the same location with these cool landmarks. Like the Science Institute has a massive functioning rocket in front of it.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you go in there?
Hey, you know in Breath of the Wild, when you start the game and you can see the castle, and then you can see 4 laser beams pointed at the castle?
Yep.
That's all I have to say about that.
Yeah.
That.
And it pulls you towards the castle, but also pulls you towards where those beams tend to be coming from.
It's also great because you have a line of sight, but it also like kind of fits thematically.
It gives you a reference point, and you also have a goal.
Yeah, but it's also like they're doing something. They're not just showing you the way. Like they could have totally just been like, okay, you know, that's what they're doing there, but no, they're doing a job.
But as a game designer now, you also know where your players are probably going to go earlier on, which means you can put rewards, quest rewards there, progression items, skill ups, like major areas to talk to NPCs.
Yeah, you can also know where to protect characters from going, right? Yeah, if you've got those 4, you know, okay, so let's talk about like, you know, Breath of the Wild is like basically 4 different quadrants and a central area, right? Broadly speaking. If you know that players are going to go to one of those 4 things, you know how to guide them through the narrative that makes it satisfying to get a divine beast, right? And then you know when they're finally going to attempt Hyrule Castle, they're going to have, you know, either they're going to have all of them or they're going to have less than 4, right? And you can design your narrative around that.
Yeah. And that's very, like, that's just very important in game design. Your game should be a theme park, effectively. And talking about designing your game like a theme park.
It's not a bad analogy is what makes it...
My entire next topic is that games should be theme parks.
You know what? I think I just have a problem with theme parks, broadly speaking, from just like an environmental standpoint.
Yes.
But I do like it as a video game analogy.
Yeah. As a design philosophy, it's really good.
Yes.
But this comes into our last topic, which I originally called this basic open world design, but it would probably be better called as theme parking. And I want to talk about a problem that exists within Oblivion, exists within Skyrim, it exists within even Fallout New Vegas, to a much lesser degree, because that game is perfect. But exists in some of the Legend of Zelda games too, to a much lesser degree, because they have dungeons, and you'll see why in a second. But that when everything in the world is the same, every dungeon is a crypt with Draugr in Skyrim, or a mountain cave, or a wizard's lair, and that's it. When everything has the same theme, why would you go halfway across the world to see that theme again?
Yeah.
So you should be designing your games as theme parks. And I remember
different areas for different little themes.
Yeah, I remember doing research on this topic as through the extra credits videos with Taya, and we saw them mentioning Baldur's Gate 2 as the example for this.
Throwback.
Well,
which was wild because that video came out 12 years ago.
that video?
Yeah, the video that talked about Baldur's Gate 2. Baldur's Gate 2 was like 20 years old.
Oh, I understand. Okay.
Right? So back then, there was no such thing as a Baldur's Gate 3, which is just weird to think about seeing it. But I guess I'll kind of throw this question over as well, because like you can imagine if a game had everything being kind of similar in theme, it would start to fall apart in many ways. So how do you avoid that?
I think breaking things up into different like thematic pieces is good. Having some similarity or overlap just tells you that the world is cohesive. I don't need to see aliens on one side and I don't know, what's the opposite of aliens?
Trees?
Mummies? I don't know. They don't need to be like totally disparate.
Mole people?
Mole people? They don't need to be totally disparate to have similar themes, but I do think it's valuable that if I'm going from this side of the map to that side of the map, it's got to be different. And it has to be engaging.
Flavor feel different, but the cuisine type is the same.
Yeah.
Right?
And
like
I
it's
think,
a different dish within
yeah.
that.
You have an overall theme and you have a regional theme.
Yeah.
I feel like this is something that's really good in Baldur's Gate 3, right? Where you have the main town and their town, quote unquote, Emerald Grove, which is so early in the game, that's fine to say, right? That has this whole kind of theme, craft spaceship and grove. And then you go past the grove and you're like, this is goblin themed.
Yes.
Right? Without spoiling anything further, this is goblin themed.
Yeah.
And there's the Underdark regions, which again, not spoiling it, but this is Underdark themed. And then you go into the next act, which
there's
I haven't.
There's little journey pieces. And in all fairness, like there's routes that you choose in Baldur's Gate 3. And because I'm the explorer archetype, as we've talked about before,
Bartle's taxonomy.
Look, I finished the whole Underdark thing and then went back right before it told me that I wasn't going to be able to go back anymore, and I did the whole mountain pass side just because I was like, what else is here? Worth it.
If it was
you know
fun.
what? It was good. I had a great time. But yeah, like they all felt different, right? And enough that I was like, I want to go look at the other one, right? You gave me two choices. I want to know what both of those choices were. Yeah, but both equally difficult.
But what this also means is if a player is enjoying one specific theme park, quote unquote, or one specific region,
I'm living for the Underdark.
If they stay in that region, they get more of that region. And if they want something new, they leave the region, they get new things, right? It's a very consistent, what's coming so you can make an informed decision. And the world feels more put together.
That's a great point. Like if you're doing, let's just do Underdark and Mountain Pass. I don't think that's a huge spoiler. If you do Underdark, you're going to get to an area where there's more dark. Okay? That's just how that's going to work. The Underdarker. It just continues. You get dark. If you do the Mountain Pass, the themes of the Mountain Pass and the stuff that you discover in there are also that sort of like, hey, bright and sunny and we're in the mountains and these are the things that I'm witnessing. That all works. Yeah. It's a great choice.
Yeah. It works out in that by designing these themes, you can have expectations on the player that would have done the basics in the zone they're in. So whatever they do in the zone, you now know that they know the basics, that they know how to progress, and that they want to progress. They're consenting to it. They're here because they enjoy it. And if they don't want to be there, they'll go to a new zone where they have to do the basics of that zone. Yeah. And now you can guarantee a player knowledge without closing off the world. Yeah. And the player now has consented to a decision. They've made a decision where they want to be.
And you can also throw the right challenges at them to make sure that their skill level matches the next challenge that you want to put in their way.
Yeah, it's almost like you're building mini games within a larger game.
It really is. It really is a series of smaller games.
Yeah.
And then you can scale those games themselves to the player level.
Yeah. that's how you would do like level scaling properly.
Yeah, scaling a region.
Yeah, yeah.
Just predicting the unpredictability. Just
Well, it was
make
just
it
like-
and compartmentalize it. You're
Just
analysis
know the
paralysis.
unknowable.
This is what Baldur's Gate 3 does, right? Here's Act 1, here's Act 2, here's Act 3, right? And
If you're in Act
and
2, you've completed the
you've
basics
done-
of Act 1.
Yeah, we know that you're strong enough to get past Act 1, right?
I wonder what the fastest you can get to Act 2 is. What's the minimum amount of content you have to see?
Speed running Baldur's
Speed running
Gate.
Baldur's Gate?
Interesting.
I'm going to check the speedrun times.
I don't know. Speedrunning for me is is so antithetical to how I play games.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I
The
will
player that interacts with everything.
I will be looking at
Yeah.
everything. I will be chopping down trees.
Me looking
I'm
directly at Taya from when
Yeah.
we played Pokemon Infinite Fusion.
Yes, us playing through Pokemon Fusion, I am the player that has to look in every single trash can in every single room to make sure there isn't a goodie hidden in there.
I smash every clay pot.
Yeah,
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 yeah.
And just interacting with random rocks and trees because you never know
You
what's
never
going to
know.
jump out at
Yeah.
you, right?
I tend to do the thing where, like, if I walk past a thing and it's like, you failed a perception check, I'm like, well, I know that chest isn't going to be full of stuff that I want, but I won't.
But there's a
But
chest.
there's a chest.
There's a
And
thing I can
I
poke.
want to open it.
yeah, let me poke it,
Look,
please.
sometimes I will put down games because I'm like, there's no way that I can't play it without looking for every chest and every little secret thing. So I can't play this right now because I'm tired of doing that.
The Baldur's Gate any % world record was beaten today.
Whoa.
Oh,
Like,
fun.
it says, it doesn't even say a day ago, it says today. And the
Yeah.
record for any % all acts is 18 minutes, 30 seconds
Whoa.
What does
to
that mean?
finish the game,
Oh,
finish
just
all
how
3
fast
acts.
can you do it?
to reach the end of Act 3.
Yeah.
Oh.
So, how long?
18 minutes and 30 seconds.
Like, that's quicker than I can build a
This
character.
is very recent.
Yeah.
Nobody has gotten below 20 minutes until, like, this week. This week is when they broke the 20-minute barrier.
Interesting.
New challenge, folks.
Huh, that's fun. 18 minutes is so fast.
I don't know how you could do that.
There's a lot of, like, loading screens and stuff.
This person who just beat the record left a comment on the record saying, "I will cry if the person in second place takes any %." So I get the feeling they've been fighting back and forth for any %.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, I don't know. This is one of the aspects of game design that I feel like is much harder to talk about. But yeah, your world should be a series of small worlds, and in those small worlds, little pockets of interesting things.
Yeah, and this isn't. We've sort of talked a lot about open world games, but like this isn't limited to open world games. This is just the sense of like you should be able to make choices within narrative structures, within levels, to an extent, depending on what kind of game you're making, that makes it engaging. If you have any sense of openness within the game, just do this stuff that makes your character or your player feel fulfilled.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that kind of comes to the end of how to make good openness in games. So, as always, I want to throw this back over to you two. Do you have any other comments, anything interesting you wanted to talk about that we didn't really get to in this episode?
Thanks for coming on the show, Taya.
Thanks for having me again. Funsies with Disney World.
Funsies at Disney World.
Disney World.
I feel like that really is like the crux of this episode is just do it Disney World.
Do it
Do it
Disney,
Disney
World.
World.
Yeah.
It's a small world after all. Make your little
No,
hubs.
you're done. I'm cutting you off.
Off the show.
That's it.
You want my Mickey impression now?
No, absolutely
Oh my
not.
gosh.
I'm turning your mic off.
Can you? I guess you can reach over.
Just reach over and smack it.
Well, I guess
Oh my
I'm
gosh.
uninvited from the show. Thanks for
Oh,
having
no.
me.
Oh, the waveform on the editing is horrible. But yeah, so this is our overall on how to design openness in video games. Really the open world episode in many ways, but also how to build openness into your games and understand understand your player without knowing what your player will do.
And I fully expect that we'll come back and do an open world episode.
Yeah, we'll probably come back to talk about this topic again. We can invite Taya back on for these topics. I'd love to have you around
Dark
again.
Souls girly.
The Dark Souls girly coming back for part 2.
Yeah. You can talk about Elden Ring, and Ollie will
Just do an entire Elden Ring
I will
episode.
play Tears
We've
of the
already
Kingdom.
done a Baldur's Gate episode. We can just do an Elden Ring episode.
We can just do an Elden Ring episode. I will go play some of it.
I will
will
try
go-
to
I
play
will
it. I'm
go
not spending
try.
$80 on it, but
Yeah.
if I can play it on your computer.
We can have a 20-minute argument about whether or not Elden Ring should have an easy mode, because that's what the internet's currently.
It should have anything
Thinking
to
about.
This game's been out for years now.
It is a deep discussion.
Yeah,
so.
it takes a long time.
Takes
to
a
make
long
good-
time to
Look,
discuss.
It
Should this
takes
have an
a
easy
long
mode?
time to make good decisions.
I mean, I guess we did say in the
Look.
previous episode that it doesn't need an easy mode.
It doesn't need an easy mode.
It needs a
but-
way to be easier, which it does have.
I think you could make an argument for an accessible accessibility mode and hard mode. But anyway, that's
don't-
an argument
yeah.
for another episode.
So thank you so much, Taya, for coming in today.
Thanks
and
for
joining
having
us
me.
for 2 whole episodes in a single night.
Oh my
That is a
goodness.
wild level
Yeah.
of recording responsibilities.
Maximum
and,
difficulty.
and thank you, Vi. We've done 3 episodes in a single day.
Yay.
This is a lot.
I love being thanked.
We're
Thanks,
gonna
Gaia.
crash at the end of this.
Thank you for putting up with me being a little bit ill.
A little bit ill as
Just
a
a
treat
little-
for morale.
Just a little. I was trying to sniff, but I am actually just a little bit like phlegmy, so
Oh.
it didn't work.
So thank you both for coming. Thank you for you listening to this episode, for
Yeah.
listening to us ramble on about open world games.
The
and various
most
things that
important
come in.
thing you have is your time, and you're letting us use some of it.
So thank you so much for listening to today's episode, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
And that's it for today's episode. But what if you wanted to listen to more? Well, our new episodes come out every Thursday at 9 p.m. Atlantic, and there are 3 different ways that you can listen. If you're in the Fredericton area of New Brunswick, Canada, you can listen live on CHSR 97.9 FM through any of your radio services. If you're not in this region or you prefer using the internet, you can tune in on chsrfm.ca at the same time, 9 p.m. Atlantic. As well, we release all of our episodes on a number of podcasting platforms online, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. So if you wanted to, you could go back right now and listen to Season 1, where Vi and I do a deep dive into the fundamental concepts of game design, rather than the hardware they'll be taking up this season. Anyways, thank you for listening, and have a good one.